So let's start our deep dive by looking at the Ring of Fire and get into Krakatoa. So here you can see the Ring of Fire drawn. Covers the whole basin of the Pacific Ocean. It's about 25,000 miles, horseshoe shaped through South America, North America, Asia, down here through Indonesia, down here through Oceania. That's the Ring of Fire. Now, we all know Johnny Cash has the country hit Ring of Fire written by his wife, but this is a different Ring of Fire. There's almost a continuous series of activities, plate movements and the likes in this Ring of Fire. It's got over 450 volcanoes along here, and those account for more than 75% of the world's active and dormant volcanoes. So, Ring of Fire. About 90% of the world's earthquakes and about 81% of the world's largest earthquakes also occur along the Ring of Fire here. So not only do we have volcanoes, we've got earthquakes. All but 3 of the world's 25 largest volcanic eruptions of the last 12,000 or so years occurred at volcanoes in the Ring of Fire. So this is definitely the hot spot, and it's a result of plate tectonics, the movement and collision of the plates in the earth. Tectonically, Indonesia over here is highly unstable. As we look at these, we go up through Alaska here. There is a cool aerial photo taken from the space station of actually Mount Cleveland volcano from about 10-15 years ago. That's taken from the space station Mount Cleveland in Alaska. It's a nice picture of that eruption. And here you can see a map showing the global earthquakes from 1900 to 2013. And it's obvious this Ring of Fire, loaded earthquakes and volcanoes. And right here in the middle of it is Indonesia, loaded. So between 1972 and 1991, there are 29 volcanic eruptions in Indonesia, mostly on Java. All that volcanic ash has made, some unpredictable weather conditions. It's also resulted in fertile soil, so they can keep their population going. If we look back, maybe the two biggest eruptions in Indonesia, in 1815, Mount Tambora, in 1883, Krakatoa. Those are among the largest in recorded history. Here's a lithograph from 1888 of what Krakatoa might have looked at. So first, Mount Tambora caused 92,000 deaths. There's an umbrella of volcanic ash blanketed most of Indonesia. It caused harvest failures all the way to northern Europe and the northeastern United States and eastern Canada in 1816. So they called that the year without a summer. So when Mount Tambora erupted, you had a year without a summer. But they say the loudest sound ever recorded, well, now it's not the band Spinal Tap turning their amps to 11. It's when Krakatoa erupted in 1883. They say that's the loudest sound in recorded history. It was heard 2,200 miles away in Australia. And we know that Krakatoa is right between Java and Sumatra in Indonesia. The eruption itself caused almost 40,000 deaths, and there's after effects all over the world years after that. They say the eruption was equivalent to 200 megatons of TNT, which is about 13,000 times the nuclear yield of the bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima, Japan during World War II. So the whole thing with the volcanoes and the earthquakes, it's very fluid. So eruptions around here, we had Krakatoa here, Sumatra, Java, Krakatoa right in between. But since 1927, the eruptions in the area have actually built a new island at the same location. And that's named Anak Krakatau, which is Indonesian for child of Krakatoa. So It keeps moving, keeps changing. Indonesia is right in the heart of the Ring of Fire. Very volcanic, earthquake and volcanic activity. So here's a Fun with Maps fun fact. So you know this picture. That's The Scream by Edvard Munch, 1893. And there's an astronomer who suggests that the blood red sky that we see there in the painting, that was actually the color of the sky over Norway after the eruption of Krakatoa. So Krakatoa erupts in Indonesia, and at the other side of the world in Norway, the sky was red, and an artist was inspired to paint this incredible painting from what he saw from Krakatoa. So let's take a look at Java, and here's Java on the map. As I said, Java has almost 60% of the Indonesian population. It's the world's most populous island. Here's the capital, Jakarta. It's up at the northwest coast. Most of the well-known part of Indonesian history took place on Java. It was the center of the powerful Hindu Buddhist empires and the Islamic sultanates, and it was the core of where the Dutch East Indies were, colonial Dutch East Indies were headquarters. Jakarta is, well, let's look at a bigger map. So here's Java, and Jakarta is up here. Jakarta is the country's economic, cultural, and political center. You know, with that huge population, it's the most populous city in Indonesia, and in Southeast Asia's 13th most populated city in the world. Java itself is almost entirely of volcanic origin. It's got 38 mountains. It has an east-west spine, and all of those mountains have either now or have been active volcanoes. In total, Java's got more than 150 mountains. So they split the country, they split the island into isolated regions, but that's great for wet rice cultivation, and the rice lands of Java are among the richest in the world. You know, it's historically, as we said, the Hindu and Buddhist empires have a history there. This is Borobudur in central Java. It's the world's largest Buddhist temple. That's one Buddhist temple in central Java, and it's the most visited tourist attraction in all of Indonesia. So that's in central Java, which is right in there. And here's a Fun with Maps fact. You've probably heard coffee referred to as Java, right? Get a cup of Java, something like that. That's because Java was the first place where Indonesian coffee was grown, and Indonesian coffee is one of the world's best. So when you have a cup of Java, think of Indonesia. So here's Bali. Down here, it's that island right to the east of Java. It's both a province of Indonesia and an island. It's the only Hindu majority province in Indonesia. Over 80% of the population of Bali adhere to Balinese Hinduism. It's outside of central Java. It's the main tourist destination of Indonesia. It's 80% of the economy of Bali is related to tourism. They've got highly developed art and dance and sculpture and music and all that. They have an international film festival there. They've hosted the Miss World contest. The International Monetary Fund and the World Bank Group meet here in this small island of Bali. Here's a not so fun fact though. In 2017, Bali had almost 6 million tourists, and the government officials there declared a garbage emergency because it was in response to the covering of almost 4 miles stretch of coastline in plastic waste brought in by the tide. And Indonesia is said to be one of the world's worst plastic polluters. Some estimates suggesting Indonesia is the source of around 10% of the world's plastic waste. So that's not good. And then, you know, here's Bali, here's Java, Borneo, Papua New Guinea. And then let's take a look. Here's Sumatra, in red here It's one of the Sunda Islands of western Indonesia. It's the largest island that is entirely Indonesian territory. It's the 6th largest island in the world. So over here we'll see Borneo is larger, but Sumatra is entirely Indonesian, and it's the 6th largest island in the world. So here's Borneo. Borneo is the 3rd largest island in the world. It's the largest island in Asia. It's home to one of the oldest rainforests in the world. One of the things that's interesting about Borneo is it's politically administered by 3 countries at one time. So let's take a look. Okay, so it's also called Kalimantan. Probably mispronouncing that, but that's the Indonesian part of Borneo. So here's West Kalimantan, Central, East Kalimantan, South. So this whole thing is the island of Borneo. Then you have Kalimantan, which is it's about 75% of the total area of Borneo. And then you've got some that's Malaysian up here, and about maybe 1% only of the territory of Borneo is part of the sovereign state of Brunei. So in Indonesia, when you say Kalimantan, that they refer to the whole island of Borneo. But as you can see, Borneo is part Indonesian, Malaysian, and even Brunei. Finally, let's take a look at Papua New Guinea. It's kind of confusing. This is, a lot of these maps are from the CIA World Fact Book. It's a great resource about countries and geographies and people all over the world. It's all public domain stuff because it was government created, so that's a great thing. So New Guinea here, it's the whole large island. Okay, it's separated by a strait here from Australia. New Guinea is the 2nd largest island in the world after Greenland. So it's bigger than Borneo and Sumatra and a lot of the other islands. So obviously when you hear the name New Guinea, you think of Guinea. Is there a Guinea down here? No, actually, when you look at the map, Guinea, the country of Guinea, is in Western Africa. So this is New Guinea. They don't call that Old Guinea, but that's in Western Africa. So the eastern half of the island, the eastern half here, that's the independent state of Papua New Guinea. Okay, so this in the brown is an independent state, Papua New Guinea. The western half is Western New Guinea or West Papua. That's part of Indonesia and comprises the provinces of Papua and West Papua. So it's not real easy to determine, but this is an independent state, Papua New Guinea. This West Papua area of the island is part of Indonesia. So just looking at Indonesia here we got Australia down here. Here's Papua New Guinea's over there. Bali we've seen, Java we've seen, Sumatra we've seen, Kalimantan or Borneo we've seen. Here's the Celebes Island, Philippines, Malaysia. Down here is Singapore, and that gives you some kind of perspective. As we've mentioned, the size of Indonesia is huge. The tropical climate, it's an archipelago. All that gives it one of the world's highest levels of biodiversity. Even though it's got the 4th largest population in the world, there's a lot of it's the most heavily forested region on Earth after the Amazon. So they've got all these people there, but because of its size and everything, it's the most heavily forested region on Earth after the Amazon. So the islands of the Sunda Shelf, like Sumatra and Java and Borneo, Bali, they were once linked to Asia. Okay, so they have all that Asian fauna. And over here in Sumatra, you have large species like the Sumatran tiger, Sumatran rhinoceros, orangutan, the Asian elephant, the leopard. They used to be abundant all the way over here, all the way to Bali, but the numbers have dwindled drastically. Papua, on the other hand, was part of the Australian landmass. So centuries, millennia ago, it split off from Australia. So it's got unique flora and fauna that's more closely related to Australia. So here we've got this part that's split off from Asia. Here we've got the part that's split off from Australia, and the plants and animals that are in each location are indicative of that. So, in fact, Indonesia is second only to Australia in terms of total endemic species, and endemic just means native and restricted to a certain place. So, almost 40% of its species of mammals are endemic, and 35% or so of its species of birds are endemic. So, great biodiversity. Remember, this part split off from Australia millennia ago, and this part split off from Asia, and it's pretty clearly defined by their flora and fauna. Okay, so one more Fun with Maps fact before we go to the close. Here's the flag of Indonesia. It's two equal horizontal bands of red. The red's on top, and the white. The red symbolizes courage. The white represents purity. All of that. So it's essentially same as the flag of Monaco. You know, Monaco's flag is just a little shorter, but it's still got the red on top half, and white on the bottom. And if you look at the flag of Poland, it's basically reversed from Indonesia. So there's Poland, it's got the white on top and the red on the bottom. So it can be confusing, but if you're ever on Jeopardy and you see red on top, white on the bottom, you can guess Monaco or Indonesia. And if you get confused and say Poland, well, that's not too bad. So that's a look at Indonesia. You know, for a country that populous and that, you know, it's about it's about 3 times this size of the state of Texas, and it's so influential with so many people and the trade routes and all that. I don't remember learning much about it in school. Maybe I wasn't paying attention, but you know, I always liked geography and some of that. I think I would have learned more. I think it's important to learn about countries and regions like Indonesia. There's about 8 million Indonesians around the world who have left Indonesia, including a lot in the United States. Most are in Malaysia, and the Netherlands, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Hong Kong, Singapore. But the United States has a fair number. There's a college group here in Cleveland of Indonesian students. That's it for this episode of Fun with Maps. Thanks for all your emails and comments. Please keep them coming. My name is Dan Hanson. I'm your host here, and we'll see you in the next episode of Fun with Maps.